Okay, I think we're starting to settle now. So thank you and welcome to the final session that we're running in the Meet the Russell Group webinar series delivered by us here at UK University Search. We've had 4 fantastic sessions so far covering a number of different topics. And today we're covering personal statements. For many of you who are going to be applying this year, there's obviously going to be some general information about personal statements and the application deadline you're going to have coming up. And for those in year 12 or maybe year 11 or under, there's going to be a little bit of information, of course, about the changes that are going to be applying to personal statements in the not too distant future. So we have got a number of excellent universities with us today. So far on the chat, we've got the University of Birmingham, Durham University, King's College London, and University College London. And in the chat in the background, we've got the University of Liverpool, LSE, University of Sheffield, and University of Southampton. Now, if I can ask you all, there is a Q&A button right at the bottom, which you can use to ask all the sort of questions that are burning during the session itself. What I would say is just to refrain from hitting that button for the moment. We're going to do a bit of an introduction with all of our universities who are going to be presenting initially, and then we're going to get into the Q&A session. And there's been a number of very, very good questions which have been pre-supplied, which we are going to go through. Now, as I say, we've got representatives from Birmingham, Durham, KCL, UCL, Liverpool, LSE, Sheffield, and Southampton on the session. If you've got any question which is specific for one of those institutions, if you could just make sure to mark it for their attention when you're putting the question in, and they'll be able to get your question and be able to answer it hopefully as soon as possible. So we're going to pass over to the first speaker of the day, which is Georgina from the University of Birmingham. I'm just going to share my screen to bring up the slides, and then Georgina, I will pass over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I'll just do a bit of buffering whilst we wait for my slides to come up. So my name is Georgie. I'm one of the Senior Student Recruitment Officers here at the University of Birmingham, and I'll be able to answer any questions you have today. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes just giving you a bit of information about Birmingham as a university, and on our slide here, we've just given kind of some of our key points. One of the really great things about the University of Birmingham is we are a really green campus. We are one of the largest universities in the UK, and we are a campus-based university, meaning that everything is all in one place. Everything from our medical school and student hospital all the way to our Guild of Students, and we even have our own train station on campus as well that can get you into the city centre in 8 minutes, and those trains run every 10 minutes. Something that's really exciting and really kind of great for us is we are the most targeted university for top employers for 2024. So we really like to push our graduate employability. Lots of people go to university to get a job and to get a really good job when they graduate. So we have an award-winning careers network that work really hard in working on our graduate networks and making sure that we can get our students into graduate jobs when they graduate. Part of our big plan over the next kind of 10 to 20 years is also to kind of do really well in the global rankings. So we are currently 84th in the world rankings, and we are trying to really push our global presence. And with that, we have developed a campus in Dubai to help reach our global networks. Something else that we really like to do is our student mobility and study abroad years. We do have over 250 partner universities worldwide for study abroad opportunities, and they are available for most of our courses, whether you do a full year, a semester, or some work experience volunteering or an internship abroad. And we have places you can go to as close as France and places in Europe, but also places like Australia, Canada, and America. Because we are such a large university, naturally that comes with lots of clubs and societies. So we have over 300 different clubs and societies available on campus. And again, there are a whole host of different things available. So if you are looking for student life and to really immerse yourself in extracurricular activities, whether that's giving back to the local community via volunteering, joining something to do with like your hobby or your passion, or joining a sports club, we are very passionate about sport as well. And you can see from our picture of campus there, we do have state-of-the-art facilities for sport. We did host some of the Commonwealth Games, and we were the lead kind of training village, so where most of our athletes came and stayed. So we actually had all of our facilities upgraded for the Commonwealth Games in 2022. So a lot of what you can see there is about 2 years old. So that's kind of everything and a little bit about Birmingham as a university. If anybody does have any specific questions that they would like to know about Birmingham, I'll be more than happy to answer those in the chat, and I'll hand over to the next person.
That's great. Thank you very much, Georgina. So yeah, so now we've got Jem from Durham University.
Hi everyone, yeah, I'm Jen from Durham, and just a few kind of bits of statistical and interesting information about us. We are a national leader. Now this slide was actually prepared a couple of weeks ago. We have just risen to 5th in the UK in the Times and the Sunday Times, but currently 7th in the Complete University Guide and the Guardian. So we are a national leader. And also world leader again. I do apologise, that statistic is slightly out of date, so sadly we have dropped slightly. We are 89th in the world, but nevertheless we are a leading university. We are a Russell Group university, which means that we are a research intense university. What that means for you is that it means that you are taught by experts in the field that you're studying. So all of our teaching staff are actively engaged in research, and in teaching is research led. So it's very much at the forefront of what's happening. As a student, you sometimes get the opportunity to actually input into some of that research and actively get involved. It has been known for students to actually have their name published in some research papers. So that's an exciting prospect at Durham. So we are very academically focused, and we have around 26 departments crossed over in 4 faculties, so lots of different courses that you can apply for at Durham. We are a very sporty university, and we like to think that we're probably one of the best universities to combine sporting and academic excellence. So if you're a really high performing sports person, then we can support you in a number of different sports. If we don't offer them at the university, then we can usually support in other ways. And we support students to be able to perform academically while still competing at a really high level. So we've had many students perform in the Olympics and win medals in the Olympics, the most recent ones. There was a number there. But sport is it's for everybody. So if you want to play sport at Durham, you can, regardless of ability or experience. And the other really special thing about Durham is the collegiate system, and it's really unique at Durham. So very different to any other collegiate university. So our colleges, we have 16 of which are undergraduate. They're not aligned to any specific course or department. So we have an equal proportion of students from every subject in every college, which means you have the opportunity to make friends studying different subjects, but also from different corners of the UK, different areas of the world. So it's a really great way to make friends. We've just had arrivals weekend where students are dropped off in their college and they're met by literally a huge welcome party and celebrating their arrival and supporting them just to kind of get used to the new environment in a smaller setting. The colleges provide the opportunity to socialise in lots of different ways. So sports and societies are a big part of college life, as they are in the wider university as well. The colleges will put on different activities throughout the year for students. So they'll have nights where they'll arrange like big board game competitions and trips into the city centre to do different things, trips into Newcastle. So it's an opportunity to get involved in different activities if you haven't already got that ready-made set of friends to do it with. And they also provide a really great layer of support. So if you have any concerns about anything when you're at Durham, whether it's about your course or more about kind of personal living things, day-to-day life, then there is always somebody available to speak to in the college. So that's Durham. and I'll pass over to the next person.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jen. So our next person is Jamie from King's College London.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Jamie. I'm from King's College London. I'm one of the student recruitment officers here. So King's College London was actually got a long history. We were founded in 1829, and ever since then, we've kind of grown both in size, our faculties, our course offerings. So currently, we've actually got around 43,000 students, and that comprises of kind of undergraduates, those doing bachelors, postgraduates doing masters, as well as those doing PhDs. At the moment, we've got more than 185 courses. So depending on what you're interested in, it can literally range from kind of STEM, more traditional subjects, but also kind of art and humanities. We are responding to the times at the moment. There are a lot of kind of new courses we are offering, just because we believe that kind of the students that come to us and leave us afterwards are prepared for the kind of future and to meet kind of the contemporary society and the kind of issues we are facing at the moment. So you can see the lovely picture we have here. We are situated in the very heart of London, our 5 campuses, depending on which course you want to do. More popularly, our Guy's campus kind of houses our health and sciences, medicine and dentistry, and our Strand and Bush House campus houses our arts and humanities, School of Law, King's Business School. So even though you are kind of situated in those different faculties, you are kind of, as a King student, will have access to them. And we have a few dotted around. So our furthest one being in Denmark Hill in Southeast London, which houses our Institute of Psychology, Psychiatry and Neuroscience. We are also part of the Russell Group University. And in terms of where we sit, we're top 40 in the world rankings. And of course, also happy to answer any questions you have in the chat about our courses or student support or anything at King's. But yeah, that's me for now. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Now passing over to Raoul at University College London.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to be here today. So very quickly, UCL is a large institution in central London. We're about halfway between the British Museum and the British Library, to give you an idea roughly where we are within London. And we have over 430 degrees available at undergraduate level. And they're spread across the faculties of Arts and Humanities, the Bartlett Faculty of the Built Environment, Brain Sciences, Engineering Sciences, the Institute of Education, Laws, Life Sciences, Mathematical and Physical Sciences, Medical Sciences, Population Health Sciences, and Social and Historical Sciences. So a huge offering, and very likely that you might find something that interests you. So we were set up on the philosophical guidance of Jeremy Bentham, and his body remains on display on campus to this day. So he left his body for medical science, and you can see that he was cut up, put back together again, and his auto icon is on display in our student centre. Research is a key part of what we do at UCL, and we really look to sort of shape the media, shape the story about what's happening in the world with the research that we do. So today we've had huge coverage about our research of British adults being healthier in midlife than US peers. We've had, again, coverage and huge coverage about 1 million people who never regularly smoke now vape in England. So that research is out there and shapes the news that's around us on a daily basis. 31 Nobel Prize winners, one in each decade of the prize. Currently ranked 9th in the world in the QS rankings, and of course, the Times and Sunday Times Good University of the Year. So that's really exciting. We have a new campus that's just opened over in East London, and that's offering new programs in media and communications at undergraduate level. So that's really exciting and a key part of the East Bank Arts facility. And at that point, I'll pass on.
That's great. Thank you so much, Raoul. And our final intro comes from Michael from University of Cambridge.
Thanks very much. I'm Mike Nicholson. I'm the Director of Recruitment, Admissions and Participation at the University of Cambridge. Cambridge is a world-class university, over 800 years in existence, tends to offer courses in fairly traditional subjects, so arts, humanities, social sciences, law, and then on the technology side, most of the sciences and also engineering. We also offer medicine and veterinary science. Key thing, I guess, for Cambridge is we are looking for students who are capable of working in an environment where you have very small group teaching. Typically, many of our undergraduate students will be taught in groups of 2 to 3, along with a tutor, and that will be a very common element of your education, typically 1 or 2 supervisions every week in that sort of format. There's also a very heavy workload. Many of our students would be expected to write the equivalent of a 3,000 to 5,000 word essay every week of every term that they are at university. So we are looking for students who are academically highly capable and are prepared to work incredibly hard over the course of their time with us. We don't tend to offer many vocationally orientated degrees. Even things like our law degree tend to be fairly philosophical in their thinking, but that doesn't mean our students don't go on and get a wide range of career-related opportunities. We also have a substantial proportion of our students looking to do further study, so going on to do a master's and doctoral study after they graduate. We take in about 10,000 students at undergraduate level overall. In a typical year, we'll get something like 22,000, 23,000 applications, and we will be looking to make offers to about 3,500 to 4,000 of those students. So getting an offer is actually quite a competitive process in itself. We get very few students, however, who once they've had an offer will not get the grades to then progress. So there's a very low cover ratio on the number of applications to places. We do, as part of our application process, often require students to do tests in advance of their consideration for an interview, and all of our courses will require students to attend an interview. It could be online, it could be in person, it depends on the college that you're applying for. And we do have, as our colleagues at Durham, have a collegiate system. So students, in addition to applying to the University of Cambridge to do a particular subject, have the opportunity to express a preference for a particular college that they wish to study at. Not all colleges do all courses, so part of your research needs to check whether the subject you want to do, which is obviously the most important consideration, is on offer at the college that you want to express a preference for. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. So that rounds up the kind of beginning part of the personal statement session that we're running. So thank you very much for all those who have contributed so far. And I can see there's been a lot of questions already come through. Many of these questions that are being asked at the moment can probably be covered during the session that we're about to move into, which are the questions of our panelists. So just a little bit of a reminder about who we've got today, because when you are asking a question, if it is specific for one of our panelists or for their institution, it would be good to add their name into it. So we've got Birmingham, Cambridge, Durham, KCL, UCL, Liverpool, LSE, Sheffield and Southampton. So as I said, we're going to move into the question portion of this particular session, and that's going to take me over to Georgina again from the University of Birmingham. So Georgina, the first question that we're covering is, are there benefits to submitting your UCAS application earlier, or do we have an equal chance when submitting them later in the application cycle?
Okay, thank you. So there are a few things to consider here, depending on what course and potentially what university you are applying for. So in theory, kind of the answer is no, there is not a massive advantage to submitting your application early. So the first deadline that you have to watch out for is if you are thinking of doing medicine, dentistry, veterinary medicine, and then applying for Oxford or Cambridge, your deadline is the 15th of October. So you do have a slightly earlier deadline than anybody else applying for any other courses. So that's the first thing that you need to look out for. And everybody else does have until the 29th of January to get their application in. And this is under something that we call equal consideration. So all universities have to give equal consideration, whether you apply on the 17th of October or the 28th of January. We have to do that equal consideration. It is not first come, first serve, or anything like that. However, when we say this, we as universities, our admissions tutors, our admissions teams, we do really enjoy early applications. It does make it a lot easier for us if applications do come in earlier, in terms of we're slightly less busy. It's easier for us to process them. And also if you are applying with your school or college, which most of you probably will be, they will have an earlier internal deadline. For some of you, this could be October half term or before Christmas, because when you submit your UCAS application, it does then go to your school for checks and references. So it is really important to stick to your school deadline if you have one. So not quite a simple answer as a just yes, no, but it does depend on kind of where you are applying and what you're applying for. But we do have to abide by that equal consideration. So nobody needs to panic or rush to get their application in tonight or tomorrow. You do all have a bit of time. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Georgina. We're going to go over to Jen then again from Durham University. Just a quick one before I ask the question, Jen. Just to note, when you're using the Q&A section, try and make sure that you're putting everything into a single question rather than maybe submitting something that it's for the attention of someone and then separately doing the question, or else it kind of plugs up the Q&A a little bit. So all in one question would be great. And obviously only submit the question once, because we don't want questions to be answered more than once, because obviously we've only got a limited amount of time. But okay, over to Jen at Durham. Jen, the question is, how do I write a good introduction and conclusion? Are these parts even especially important? It's a long question. Is it true admissions officers stop reading if the introduction is not good enough?
Okay, so a few points to make on that. If you're in year 12 or below, then an introduction and conclusion is not important. I mean, it's kind of not anyway. It's the least important bit of the personal statement in some respects. If you're in year 12 or below, UCAS have reformed the personal statement, so it is now based on a set of 3 structured questions. So you have to answer 3 questions. There is lots of detailed guidance about this on the UCAS webpage, so please do refer to those. So rather than just having kind of one open piece of text to write, it's very structured, like I say, by these questions. So that naturally kind of negates the need or the feeling that you need to give an introduction or a conclusion. And you absolutely should not give an introduction and a conclusion to each section, because that is just absolutely not required. If you are in year 13, again, an introduction and a conclusion is not important. And you might have varying different advice on this, and because it doesn't seem natural when you're writing a piece of work, kind of not to give an opening and not to kind of give a closing. And I think students get far too hung up on this. What I always recommend, and this is my recommendation if you're in year 13 and you're applying now, is that you write the main bit of your personal statement. So get the bones on it. Then start with a very simple opening, a very simple closure, just to kind of nicely start it off and round it off. A good admission selector, I like to say, will not just stop reading after the first line, unless perhaps you've said, I would like to apply to Manchester to study, and you're also applying to Durham, then that might, close that, because they're not going to feel that you genuinely want to apply to Durham. But they're not going to just stop reading they wouldn't feel this, that you've maybe started off not so strongly. So please do not get hung up on an introduction or a conclusion. If you're in year 13 and year 12 and below, you just don't worry about it whatsoever, because you're going to have 3 structured questions to answer. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jen. Now we're going to go back over to Jamie at KCL. Jamie, how can I write a personal statement that appeals to all 5 universities and potentially even a different course?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And I think this is probably one of the biggest challenge for a lot of students. And of course, as many of the reps have also mentioned, you would be getting kind of various advice. And typically we would advise for you to kind of apply to similar courses, just because you do have that one personal statement that will go all out to different institutions. But my biggest advice would probably be to kind of distinguish kind of the common grounds between a lot of the courses you're applying for, particularly as well the skill set that many of the courses are looking for as well. In some university website, there is hopefully a kind of a bit of information on what they are looking for in personal statements. So it's just important you kind of do a rigorous research around that. I think a lot of kind of the admissions teams are looking just essentially to sense check your passion for the subject and your motivation as well. You know, it is a lot of the courses you will be applying to will typically last between 3 years, and it's a long time. And so for a lot of the universities on the call as well, is very competitive. So we're looking for students who are kind of going above and beyond. So how are you demonstrating to us that you're passionate about the subject? Through kind of research you've done, resources you've accessed, things you've read, listened to, or any kind of work experience you've done or shadowing, as well as kind of extracurricular activities that you've done. So kind of ensuring to include those in a concise way, and essentially how you feel you would kind of be a benefit to that degree course and what you can add. So that would be my advice for that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jamie. Now going back over to Raoul at UCL. Raoul, the question is, if I'm applying in 2025, will there be any personal statement changes affecting me? And what are the changes for 2026 onwards?
Okay, so the good news for students applying for 2025 entry, so next year, no changes. At the moment, it's still a single essay. For 2026 entry, though, things do change. And the personal statement is changing from one longer piece of text to 3 separate sections, each with a different question to help shape the focus for students' answers. Each section will have a minimum character count of 350 characters, which is clearly labelled on the question boxes, along with an overall character counter to ensure students know if they're on track. The new webpage for submitting the personal statement will also feature helpful on-page guidance for each question. The new questions are as follows. Why do you want to study this course or subject? How have your qualifications and studies helped you to prepare for this course or subject? And finally, what else have you done to prepare outside of education, and why are these experiences useful? Worthwhile saying that the personal statement will still be 4,000 characters in total, and this includes spaces, and it's regarded that the content of the personal statement will be largely the same as it is now, but set through these 3 scaffolded questions to assist students more clearly.
That's great. Thank you so much, Raoul. And now passing over for the end of the first round of questions, we're going to go to Michael at the University of Cambridge. Michael, the question for you, what would be considered an unoriginal personal statement? Is there anything that is overused?
Number of things, students talking only really about the stuff that they've been covering on their A-levels. It doesn't really advance us in our assessment of how engaged they are in their subject choice. Also, students who rely heavily on quotations to pad out their personal statements. Generally, they are not particularly original. They're often sourced by either using ChatGPT or using kind of Google search engines or things like that. Doesn't really add any value to us. We've got very limited space on a personal statement. Candidates have 4,000 characters at most. We'd rather be interested in what you have to say about your motivation, your interest for the subject, what you've been doing to develop that interest, than quoting people who died 300 years ago about why they thought philosophy was a good thing to do. So really, really important that you use the very limited opportunity you've got to focus in on why you are right for the course, what your motivation is, and what you've been doing to demonstrate.
That's great. Thanks so much, Michael. So now moving into our second round of questions, which means we're going to be reporting back to Georgina at the University of Birmingham. Georgina, the question for you, should I mainly talk about my academic interests or about my experiences and what kind of person I am? Should I include quotes? How personal should we get on a personal statement?
Okay, thank you. So it is a personal statement, so we do want you to be personal with it and give examples. One of the things that I think lots of students need to watch out for is that it's a statement, not a story. So we don't necessarily want your life story or you going into detail about things that have happened to you. As Mike has just said, it is a very short piece of work. You don't have a lot of space, and some of you will probably find that you can't fit everything on that you want to talk about. So it is really important that you keep to the point. In terms of talking about kind of your interests or keeping it academic related, most of what you write about will need to be, and you will want it to be academic related, but some of you might find that if you are maybe applying for a course that's not necessarily offered at A level or is something that you haven't studied before, you might be using experiences or interests or extracurricular activities to showcase why you're interested in that subject and why you are picking that particular subject to study. But you want to make sure that you are linking it back to university, the course, the degree in your interests. So for example, kind of a really good one that we would like to see and we kind of tend to use is if you're maybe interested in doing kind of like architecture or something like that. So again, probably haven't done it at A level, but you've spent some time outside researching. It's telling us kind of the research that you have done and then showing us how that is going to help you on the course. Another really good thing to use and a really good tool to use whilst you're going through your personal statement is what we call the PEEL method. This used to be the ABC method, but we are now changing into the PEEL method. And it's point, evidence, explain, and link. So make your point of what you're trying to say, provide us the evidence of where that has come from, explain a little bit about what you're talking about, and then link it back to the university course that you are applying for. And then finally, in terms of quotes, always get asked about this all the time. We personally at Birmingham and for most universities, we do advise against using quotes. They're not you, that's not your writing, you haven't made them up. That's not your personal experience, that's you using somebody else's words. And we often find that people don't use them in the right way or they're interpreting them wrong. So we do find it best if you avoid using quotes in your personal statement. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Georgina. Back now over to Jen at Durham. The question for you, Jen, is, should I write about experiences that don't relate to my course, but where I've gained transferable skills?
Great question. Yes, absolutely. If the transferable skills are relevant to university study as a whole, then absolutely, and it likely will be. So things like communication, teamwork, time management, those sorts of skills that you often derive from things that you do outside of school, as well as in school sometimes, then you should absolutely reflect and evidence these in your personal statement because they are really important. And the important thing is that you don't just say, I've gained transferable skills from working part-time in Tesco's. You have to be very specific and say what that transferable skill is, how you've developed that, and why it's going to be useful for university study. So yeah, you should definitely evidence those. If it's not directly like subject specific, but it's going to help you to be a really good student at university.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jen. Now back over to Jamie at KCL. Jamie, your question is, if you achieve much higher grades than what you've been predicted, is there a way to have my application reconsidered if it wasn't made an offer based on my predicted grades?
Thanks, Martin. So unfortunately, we do kind of distribute offers on a conditional basis. So in the event that you don't achieve the grades, unfortunately, we won't be able to kind of provide you an offer. It is kind of the case of perhaps trying your luck and clearing to see if it is in our clearing subjects for that year. Or alternatively, you can kind of reapply the following year. So perhaps taking a gap year and then applying for that course to kind of support with that.
That's great. Thank you so much. Back over to Raoul at UCL. Raoul, your question is, if an entry requirement is missed, but the personal statement stands out, or there are other achievements, can admissions teams be a little bit lenient, especially regarding GCSE grades?
Okay, I think this is going to vary from institution to institution, really quite dramatically. So there's a range of sort of entry requirements and competition within the Russell Group for places at our institutions. So certainly for UCL, we would look for all of our applicants to meet or exceed our minimum entry requirements. If a student is perhaps under the maths requirement for law, we may still consider their application. I think that's something students can think about, but you do have to bear in mind that we are a competitive institution at UCL. So I think last year we had 89,000 applications at UCL. So some of our programs are up to 40 applications per place now. So it's really, really important that when you're applying, you are aiming to meet or exceed the minimum entry requirements, certainly for UCL to have a chance of being made an offer. Okay.
Thank you so much, Raoul. And the final question of our second round, which will go through to Michael at the University of Cambridge. Michael, the question is, how should I prepare for an interview? What are the mistakes to avoid during one?
So interviews are the closest equivalent that we've got to a tutorial or a supervision. So what we're trying to assess is, are you the sort of student that when you're in a conversation about your subject or an element of your subject, you're able to verbally engage in a way that suggests that you are learning as you go. There's plenty of good examples on our website of interview questions, videos of mock interviews for you to take a look at for many of our subject disciplines. The key thing is to actually be able to articulate your thinking. So we're looking for students who are able to tell us why they think what they think and why they're using the evidence that they're using. It is possible, we find, for students to get quite nervous at an interview. The interviewers are trained to kind of deal with that. The key thing is not to just dry up or say nothing. And if you haven't understood a question, it's perfectly acceptable to ask us to repeat the question or phrase it in a different way. We want this to be a successful experience for you. The kind of final thing it's worth saying is we're not looking to trick you. There's a lot of mythology around interviews at universities. We've got 25 minutes, 30 minutes at most to really get a sense of how you engage. There is no point of spending our time asking a whole load of questions that are designed to trap you or trick you. We're genuinely interested in how you think and how you explain how you think.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Michael. So we're going to go around to a third round of questions as well. So we're going to go over to Georgina again at the University of Birmingham. Georgina, would a gap year be looked upon favourably for life experience when completing your personal statement?
Yes, it can be. What we always recommend with gap years is to look at each individual university's kind of stance on them before you kind of apply or take your gap year. Most universities, for most courses, especially us at Birmingham, we absolutely don't mind if you're going to take a gap year, and it can be really great for gaining experience, especially for courses and degree programs that lead into specific careers. So things like nursing and social work, physiotherapy, where we're really looking for some work experience, understanding kind of the sector and the career that you're going into. So a gap year can be really favourable. We also don't mind if you want to take a gap year just to get a job, save some money, maybe do a bit of travelling. That's also absolutely fine. Gap years aren't just for, you know, experience, they can be for absolutely anything. Sometimes where you might run into issues with the gap year is if, for example, you're thinking of maybe medicine or dentistry, especially with Birmingham, we don't always guarantee gap years for those, especially if you're not applying for deferred entry. So you want to get your place and then go on a gap year. And also if you want to resit, so maybe you want to resit one of your grades because you didn't quite make the grades for the course. For medicine and dentistry, we're not normally as flexible on that, but for other courses, we can be. So we do always recommend checking, as each university will have different policies, and they will be different on each kind of course as well. But usually for most people in most courses, gap years can be a really great opportunity for people.
Thank you so much, Georgina. And now back to Jen at Durham University. Question for you, Jen, is, and I've seen this a couple of, well, a few times actually in the Q&A, so I think it's a good one to ask. What is an EPQ and how important is it?
Okay, so an EPQ is an extended project qualification. So it's something that you might have the opportunity to do or you may be doing in school. Basically, it's like a mini research project. Now, every university will be different. Well, not everyone in different ways, but you need to check the university policy on that. At Durham, we don't reduce your offer because you've done an EPQ. The EPQ will not form part of your offer, but at some universities it will. Now, we still value it. We absolutely value it. We think it's a really great thing to do. It's really good preparation for university study because you get to learn really good research techniques, and it's something that you are going to have to do at university. So the skills that you learn are really good, and it could be that you are doing an EPQ in a subject area that you're applying for at university. So we love you to talk about it in your personal statement if that is relevant. So talk about it in relation to the academic experience and what you've learned about the subject through doing the EPQ, but also what transferable skills you've developed that are going to be really useful when you come to university. So either way, it's useful in your application, but it will depend on the institution that you're applying to, whether or not it would form part of their offer or reduce the requirements in terms of the grades that you need to get. So do just refer to individual university websites.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jen. And now back over to Jamie at KCL. Jamie, the question for you, what is the difference between an undergraduate degree and a master's?
Yeah, so very common terminologies in the world of higher education. So undergraduate degrees are typically that we often kind of synonymously use them as bachelors. So this is typically the first degree that a lot of students will go for, and a master's is typically post. We would also call it postgraduate. So it's kind of a degree that you would take after you've received your bachelor's and graduated from that. And if you tend to want to specialize in a particular field. This is why a lot of people would want to kind of opt in for a master's. There are programs that have I can't remember the name, but it includes a master's as part of that. So it would be that typically you'd end up with it starting with a bachelor's, then have an integrated master's, that's the word, as part of that. So you'll end up kind of studying that, including as part of your curriculum. So hopefully that makes a bit more sense. But yeah, I can imagine those terminologies can be quite confusing. So if you have any other questions, do let us know.
That's great. Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, the university world is absolutely littered with acronyms and everything like that. So make sure to go onto the university websites and try and find out as much as possible about that, as well as the UCAS website too. So we're going to go back over to Raoul at UCL. This is a question that wouldn't have come up about a year or two ago, certainly, but it's definitely, you see it in the news all the time, etc. at the moment. So Raoul, the question for you, am I allowed to use systems like ChatGPT or AI to help with writing my personal statement?
I think I think they're really important tools. I think all universities recognise that AI tools are really important and can be really, really useful. They can be an interesting starting off point for getting an idea of how you might want to write, what text might look like for you. Saying that at the same time, I think it's important to say we've all seen dreadful AI images created when you stick phrases in, and that's like, so use with caution, but also to be noted that UCAS checks for plagiarism as well. So using them and relying on them comes with that risk. So I think as a general sort of starting off point may be useful for actually writing a personal statement to get you into an institution. Probably not as a whole.
Fantastic, thank you, Raoul. And our final question of this particular session, back round to Michael at the University of Cambridge. The question, Michael, should I do extra reading about the subject of the course sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. Should I do extra reading about the subject of the course to write about and in my personal statement? I think that makes sense.
Absolutely. Certainly for Cambridge, we're interested in students who are really, really engaged by their subject discipline. Just to give you a kind of example of the kind of expectations around reading, if you're coming to do an English literature degree, if you've studied A-level English literature, you've probably read 8 books over 2 years in any sort of detail for the course. At Cambridge, in the first 8-week term, we'd expect you to read about 40. That's 40 texts in detail to write 3,000 to 5,000 word essays. So we are really looking for students who are already beginning to explore beyond the syllabus requirements of their A-level, their IB, or whatever the qualification they happen to be doing at the moment.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michael. And that rounds out the end of our Q&A section of this particular webinar. And I hope all of the presenters have been incredibly useful to you all in trying to figure out exactly what you're going to be doing with writing your personal statement, whether that is for application in 2025 or onwards. Now, I can see, of course, that there are a lot of outstanding questions still in the Q&A. So whilst the question and answer section is over for this particular webinar, I'm going to keep the session live so we're able to get through some of those questions. So if you haven't had your question answered just yet, please remain on and hopefully we'll be able to get through some of that for you over the coming kind of 10 or 15 minutes. So as mentioned before, this is the 5th, so the final webinar of the series that we've been running with many of the Russell Group. If you haven't been to all 5, do not worry about it. The recordings of these sessions are going to be sent across to you next week and you'll be able to view all of them. I hope you will join me in thanking some of our helpers today. We've had Georgina from Birmingham, Michael from Cambridge, Jem from Durham, Jamie from KCL, Raoul from UCL, and in the background on the chat, who have done brilliantly as well with many of the questions being asked. We've had Louise from Liverpool, Claudia from LSE, Rosie from Sheffield, and Steph from Southampton. As I say, I will keep this session open so we're able to get through some of the questions that are still there. So if you haven't had anything answered, please do bear with us and hopefully we'll be able to get through them fairly soon. But again, thank you so much again for joining us again for these sessions. You will have those recordings next week from us, which hopefully you'll be able to use as a great resource. So thank you for joining us again. Thank you to our panelists and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.